Barb made it. Great. Shabbat Shalom for all of you who ventured through the maze to get here. I have forgotten in 2 years that there can be a maze. I'm going to start on the bottom of page 6. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself for people who don't know me. My name's Judy Heller. On one hand, we have lay-led services through part of the summer. And on the other hand, we have an assistant rabbi who, after all the avoidance of getting COVID that she has done, finally got it. So we're going to put her on the Mishabaric list, even though I think she's doing really well with it from what I gather. But just for information. You have hopefully picked up a sheet, which I know I ripped off a page from. The first song on that is El Na Rafan Allah. We're going to sing that at the Mishabaric, but we're also going to sing it right now so that some new people who don't know it can learn it at least as best as you can learn it from my voice. El Na Rafan Allah, El Na Rafan Allah, El Na Rafan Ali, Refuah Shlema. El Na Rafan Allah, El Na Rafan Allah, El Na Rafan Ali, Refuah Shlema. And we'll continue on page 2 with the lighting of the candles, and Jane will light them for us.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. O God, you are the light by which we see the ones we love. As we kindle these lights, we begin a holy time. May we and all Israel find it in it refreshment of body and spirit, and the sense of that you are near us at all times. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You hallow us with Mesdat and command us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. May we be blessed with Shabbat joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat light. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace.
We will continue on page 26 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamla Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bilchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Borchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Please stand if you are able and join me for the Baruch Hu on page 28. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. And on the bottom of page 31, this is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, Hamavariv Aravim. On the bottom of 32, everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. We're going to read the Ve'ahavta in English because I think sometimes it is helpful to know what we're saying. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohim Emet. We'll continue on the bottom of page 39, responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. Instructed by sages, time and again. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations shall be one and at peace. Then we shall rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Mihi chamocha ba'lim Adonai, mihi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, no rati lot o sefela, no rati lot o sefela. Ma'alechutecha ra'uvanecha, bokei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze'eli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'elam va'ed. Ve'nemar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, uglo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. And we continue on the bottom of page 42. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haparei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'Yerushalayim. And we'll continue with Yismechu on the bottom of page 44. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu Machalachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat, Kulam Yisbehu, Yitungu Mitu Shabbat, Yismechu V'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu V'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, V'hashvi Ratzitabo, Ratzitabo v'kutashto Shabbat, Chemdat Yamim, Oto Karata Shabbat, Yismechu V'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu V'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Zecher Lamahase Vareshi Shabbat, Zecher Lamahase Vareshi Shabbat, Yismechu V'Malachutecha, Shomrei Shabbat V'Korei Onei Shabbat, Yismechu V'Malachutecha, Shomrei Shabbat V'Korei Onei Shabbat. We will rise on page 46 for the tefillah. Adonai sifatav tiftav ufia gitahilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Kunokei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei v'nehem, Laman Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Mashiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh kol atah Rav laHoshia, Morid hatal, Melchalkel chaim b'chesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. So mech noflim v'rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar michamocha bal guverot, umido melach, melech memin humechayeh, umatir Yeshua, v'namanata lechiot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kodashim b'chol yom yachutzelah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. We continue on the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. On the bottom of page 57, you are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to your prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. Let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha, v'yata na'avod. On the top of page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulracha lahadot. And the top of page 61. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael, HaShalom. Please take a few moments for your own personal prayers or thoughts. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu yahaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. So we will not be having a reading of the official Torah. I guess that makes this the unofficial Torah. But we are in the last part, the last two parashot, which are a combined one, in the book of Numbers. So that means we're really heading ever so definitely towards the high holidays. I know we have a whole nother book, but I don't know, Deuteronomy just makes me think, it's coming. So there are many interesting stories in this portion. What I am going to read from is just, verses on chapter 32, verses 1 through 8, and then I'm going to summarize the rest of this text, this section, because it is very long and very repetitive, and I don't think that we need to be here all night listening to them say the same thing over and over again. And if you have the book, it is on page 1105. The Reubenites and the Gadites owned cattle in very great number. Noting that the lands of Jezreel and Gilead were a region suitable for cattle, the Gadites and Reubenites leaders came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the chieftains of the community and said, Atoroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elilah, Sebam, Nebo, and Beom. The land that the Eternal has conquered for the community of Israel is cattle country, and your servants have cattle. It would be a favor to us, they continued, if the land were given to your servants as a holding. Do not move us across the Jordan. Moses replied to the Gadites and the Reubenites, Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here? Why will you turn the minds of the Israelites from crossing into the land that the Eternal has given them? That is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to survey the land. And he continues with complaining that after they go up, they were afraid, and Moses thinks that this is what is happening for them, but they're like, no, we're willing to go in. We're willing to, in fact, go in ahead of everyone else, but this land on the east side is really good cattle country, which, by the way, it is. It is actually better. There's more land on the east bank, more water on the east bank of the Jordan than on the west bank. So they're not making that up. And Moses and God finally agree with this, and they say, as long as you do what you have promised, you can stay on the east side. And they rebuilt the cities and set up life there. And if you've ever looked at a map of the tribes, you will see that there are a good number of them that are actually on the east side. I am actually referring to this and a couple of other portions in my sermon. And some other stuff, like Star Trek. In several Star Trek movies, there is an often quoted debate between Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk about the needs of the community versus the needs of a small group or individual. Early in the second movie, The Wrath of Khan, Spock says, "Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Captain Kirk answers, "Or the one." This sets up a pivotal scene near the end of the movie where Spock enters a radioactive chamber to fix the ship's drive so that the crew can escape certain death. As Spock is dying, he says to Kirk, "Don't grieve, Admiral. It is logical. The needs of the many outweigh," Kirk finishes for him, "the needs of the few." Spock replies, "Or the one." This being the world of Star Trek, however, it turned out in the next movie, The Search for Spock, that Spock is not actually dead. When his body was sent into space at the end of his funeral, it landed on the Genesis planet, on which his body was ultimately reanimated. His soul, meanwhile, is residing in the body of Dr. McCoy. On discovering this fact, the crew of the Enterprise steals a ship, finds Spock, brings him and Dr. McCoy back to Vulcan, where his soul and living body are reunited. The crew has put their careers and lives at risk to save Spock. Once Spock has been restored, he asks Kirk why Kirk allowed the crew to do this, and Kirk answers, "Because sometimes the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many." And all of this theology, if you are not a Star Trek-y person, is why I encourage it. This week, we have a double Torah portion, Matot Maseh, which are the last two parashot in the book of Numbers. There are several important stories and laws in these chapters, reflecting on the end of the Israelites' wilderness journey. Each of these stories is worthy of focus. I believe, however, that taken as a whole, they reflect the tension between the needs of the many or the community as a whole and the needs of a few or those representing minority positions within the community. While I chose to read from the part of the Parsha where the tribes of Reuben and Gad ask for their inheritance to be on the east side of the Jordan River, the section that addresses the concerns of the tribe of Manasseh with regard to the inheritance rights recently given to the daughters of Zelophehad also speaks to the tension between communities and individuals. In the section I just read, the Reubenites and Gadites, and later in the text, the half-tribe of Manasseh, asked for land on the eastern side of the Jordan, encompassing land from the Sea of Galilee to at least the middle of the Dead Sea region. Historically speaking, and even today, the east bank of the Jordan has had more streams coming out of the highlands than the west side did. It was, in fact, better land for those tribes raising a mix of sheep, goats, and cows. At first, Moses hears this request as a statement of fear, such as was made by the 10 scouts, who 40 years earlier said the land had giants in it and we cannot go there. Moses is, in fact, furious. The leaders of Reuben and Gad reassure Moses that they will fight on behalf of the Israelites entering the land. Indeed, they will serve on the front lines ahead of the others. When Moses hears this, he agrees to their plan. While the original vision was that all the tribes would live west of the Jordan River, the compromise allowed for both the needs of those who owned a lot of cattle and those who were settling on the west side of the Jordan to be met. The second story, that of the response of the tribe of Manasseh to Zelophehad's daughters, also addresses the tension between communal and individual needs. If you were here last week, Rabbi Sobo read the first portion in which the daughters of Zelophehad come to Moses and say that it isn't right that their father's name should be lost and that his portion of the land be given to other family members or divided up among the tribe simply because Zelophehad had no sons. God says that their cause is just and that they must be given an inheritance among their father's family. In chapter 36, which ends this week's Torah portion, the heads of the family of the descendants of Gilead of the tribe of Manasseh come to Moses and say, "Now suppose the daughters marry men from other Israelite tribes, then their inheritance will be taken from our ancestral inheritance and added to that of the tribe they marry into. And so part of the inheritance allotted us will be taken away. When the year of Jubilee for the Israelites comes, their inheritance will be added to that of the tribe into which they marry, and their property will be taken from the tribal inheritance of our ancestors." God also sees the merit of what the tribe of Manasseh says and agrees that the women need to marry within the tribe. One could see this as a loss of status or control for these women, but given that in ancient times marriage was predominantly a relationship based on the financial status and political concerns between families, the fact that these women are both given property and allowed to choose whom they will marry, albeit in a more limited form than in the first story, is in and of itself a remarkable achievement. Again, as in the story of the tribes seeking land on the east side of the Jordan, compromises have been made that allow both individuals and the community to get most of their needs met. Next weekend is Tisha B'Av. Because of how summer lay-led services fall, I have frequently led services near Tisha B'Av. When I looked at the calendar several weeks ago, I told myself that this year I wasn't going to talk about it, and yet here I am one more time doing so. At its root, Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning for the destruction of the first and second temples, along with Jerusalem. Reform Judaism, a movement born in 19th century rationalism, has been hesitant to observe a holiday grieving the temples whose religious role feels opposite to our modern sensibilities. We don't long for the day when the temple in Jerusalem can be rebuilt, and the idea of animal or even grain sacrifices is something between appalling and laughable. And even reading Lamentations, which starts, "Alas, lonely sits the city, once great with people," feels incongruous with our current experience of Jerusalem as a vibrant city in a rebuilt Israel. Why bother? For nearly 2,000 years, Jews have mourned, chanted the Book of Lamentations, and fasted on Tisha B'Av, not only for the destruction of the temple, but in memory of all Jewish suffering. Unlike Yom HaShoah, which was established to commemorate only the Holocaust, Tisha B'Av has been the day to mourn all Jewish loss. I was raised in Reform synagogues and never heard about Tisha B'Av until I was in college and read Rabbi Arthur Waskow's book, God Wrestling. The first time I attended a Tisha B'Av service was the year after I graduated from college, when I was living in Washington, D.C. Rabbi Waskow, who had recently moved to Philadelphia, came back to lead that service at the congregation he had once attended. I found the chanting of Lamentations in a darkened room hauntingly beautiful. It was the early 1980s and the middle of the Cold War. Rabbi Waskow gave a sermon connecting the fires that destroyed the temple with the ongoing potential for nuclear destruction. Today, Rabbi Waskow often writes about the connection between the fires of Jerusalem's destruction and the fires created by global climate change. My experience then, and my point now, is not the specific examples that Rabbi Waskow has given, important as they are, but that Tisha B'Av, like all Jewish holidays, is constantly being given a new meaning by every generation. At major Jewish holidays, we are encouraged to think about what the holiday means for us as individuals, for the Jewish people, or for the world, given the current circumstances of that particular year. At Passover, we ask what types of liberation we need. At Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we reflect on the past year, think about what we could have done better, and resolve to try to improve our behavior. Every year at Tisha B'Av, I find myself asking, are there losses that need to be mourned? Personal ones, communal ones. While in most years the theme of compromising between the needs of the community and those of individuals would not seem to connect with the gravitas of Tisha B'Av as a day of communal mourning, I believe that this year it does. We are struggling under an ongoing pandemic, which has become a source of divisiveness rather than national unity against a major threat. The increase in racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, and attacks on the GLBTQ community, not only by average citizens, but also by politicians and supposedly nonpartisan judges, has provoked understandable fear in many of us, as well as exacerbating the ever-widening cultural divides in this country. As this summer has progressed, it has become increasingly clear that even the most minimal bedrock notions of democracy are under attack. Too often we have lost our ability to talk to one another, or more importantly, to hear each other's pain and fear. Compromise can only happen if both parties are honest and vulnerable. The posturing and lying of modern politics has only served to create a bigger sinkhole into which individuals and communities are being swallowed whole. I believe many of us are in mourning for a country that we once knew, which for all of its struggles and fault lines had a basic sense of democracy and concern for the welfare of its citizenry. Rabbinic tradition teaches us that the Second Temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. I find that idea both attractive and profoundly disturbing. It disturbs me because it is a way of blaming the victim, even if it is the victims who are blaming themselves. The Second Temple was in fact destroyed because an oppressed and occupied Judea revolted against the powerful Roman Empire and lost. Self-blame for being unwilling to put up with oppression for one more day doesn't strike me as particularly healthy or baseless. On the other hand, the baseless hatred to which the early rabbis were referring had more to do with internal conflicts within the Jewish community, with hatred or jealousy of another for a perceived but unfactual offense. Rejections of gay and lesbian marriage by representatives who then show up at their son's gay wedding or call to congratulate their sister and her new wife on their marriage are crazy-making. Something between greed and lust for power are fueling a cultural war whose end result is potentially disastrous. Baseless hatred. So how do we change? Can we remember that the person with whom we disagree is also B'Tselem Elohim, made in the image of God? Can we remember that as we might be feeling overwhelmed by fear and anger at changes that seem out of our control, that those with whom we may have the most profound disagreements are also most likely driven by fear and a sense of loss? Recently, I've been thinking about the response of the Park Hill neighborhood in Denver to white flight in the 1960s. I grew up in Denver. They began a series of afternoon teas, followed by some evening programs to get neighbors talking to one another. White flight never happened there, and it is still the most racially and economically integrated neighborhood in Denver. Somehow, in some way, we need to learn to talk with our neighbors again, and our coworkers, and even our enemies. To return to the Star Trek image with which I began, I think that we need to be both Kirk and Spock. We need to remember that the struggle between valuing individual needs, our own or someone else's, has to be balanced by the needs of sustaining a community that, while sometimes imperfect, is nonetheless better than other options. We need to remember that for all of us to live long and prosper, we all need to show up for one another. This week we are finishing the book of Numbers. It is traditional when we finish a book of Torah to say, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Be strong, and let us all strengthen one another. And let us say, Amen. While the Torah is still in our midst, we will say a Mishabaric prayer for those who are in need of healing. I will remind you, especially if you came in late, that for Mishabaric, we are going to sing El Na Rafan Allah. So when I am done with the list and asking for names, that is what we will sing. This week, we are holding up for healing Eileen Edie, Ruth Meadow, Catherine Cooper, Rachel Magdalene, Sid Gross, Sharon Hatcher, Ken Andrews, Megan Turner, Penelope June Moyer, Ruth Hirsch, Maxine Rubin, Nisam Ben Rachel, Dave Cox, Jim Levinson, Larry Weinberger, Jody Weinberger, Jim Locke, Mitchell Quaint, Gary Pacernick, Cicely Nathan, Bob Kahn, Linda Dean Harris, Marty Sacker, Denise Brown. Is there anyone else for whom we are saying Mishabaric or whose name needs to be repronounced? El na rafana la, el na rafana lo, el na rafana li, rafua shlema, el na rafana la, el na rafana lo, el na rafana li, rafua shlema. And for those of you who don't know the prayer, it's actually the first line is the shortest prayer in the Torah. It's Moses says it for his sister Miriam, and it means, God, please, it's a kind of very imperative. God, please heal her now. And our prayer essentially says, please, God, please heal her now, heal him now, heal me now, and give us a complete healing. We will continue with Aleinu, which is found on page 282. And if you are able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gudula l'otzer breshit, shelo asanu kagoi haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam kelchenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishchachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, v'nemar, v'chaya Adonai, Amelech ol kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, ushemo echad. Please be seated. We're going to add the prayer on 285, which is part of Aleinu. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. As we move towards the recitation of Kaddish, I will be reading on the bottom of page 290. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. This week, we are in a period of Shiva for Ray Must, and in a period of Shloshim for Louise Berman. We are also remembering the yahrzeit anniversaries of Lesser Asher, Harry Bierman, Jesse Bierman, Maurice Bertelstein, Gloria Brackman, Hannah Bookbinder, Morris Epstein, Mary Grunberg, Harry F. Hampel, Mary Hanlon, David Heller, Harry Israel, Harry L. Lawner, Eric Lee, Max Mann, Charles McCudis, Shirley Miller, Ann Pearl, Alex Pearl, Herbert Pearl, Moriel Robbins Raphael, Elizabeth C. Rothenberg, Simon Sanders, Jenny Greensall, Jacob Schwartz, Louis T. Schulman, Bertha H. Silverman, Sylvia Solomon, Ruth M. Tapping, Jennifer Thomas Larson, Edwin Traeger, Sidney Weinstein, Mark Weitz, Joseph H. Wolf, James Weiss. Is there anyone else for whom we are saying Kaddish or whose name needs to be repronounced? Will those who are in mourning or remembering please rise first? Sorry. And the rest of us, please rise and join together. On page 294. Yit Kadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamech malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agal uvizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mabarach le'alam almei almaya, Yit Barach v'yishtabach v'yatmar v'yatraman v'yatnaseh, v'yatadar v'yatalei v'yatalal, Shemei dekudashah berechu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mramav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. May their memories and how we love them always be for a blessing. We are going to conclude with Odivo Shalom, which is on the sheets. Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu ve'akulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu, Odivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Shabbat Shalom, and please join us in the hallway for Kaddish and Motzi and probably a Nosh.